Hello and welcome. My name's Fiona Cooper and I'm going to be walking you through this session on making meetings work. Do you ever find yourself doodling away while someone drones on about something which wasn't on the agenda in the first place? Perhaps you sometimes wonder why you were invited to attend the meeting at all. And maybe you've sometimes sat in meetings watching the clock ticking away and thinking about all the work you could be doing that's piling up on your desk. Meetings are very expensive to run. And that's why it's bizarre that we don't put more time into planning them and making sure that they work for everybody who attends. Think about it. You might have 10 people round a table for up to 3 hours talking about things that they don't need to be there to hear. It's a very expensive thing to do. I'm going to be walking you through 6 steps to running great meetings, how I think a cycle of meetings should work, and what great meetings should achieve. So let's kick off with the 6 steps to great meetings. First off, every meeting should have an agenda. This comprises of all the points that have been put forward before the meeting by the people attending the meeting that they think they need to discuss. On the agenda, I suggest you always put next to each item how long you think that agenda item is going to take. Hopefully, you'll run the agenda item in less time than is on the actual agenda, and that's all good. The second thing I suggest you do in meetings is have ground rules. It might be that if you're running a regular meeting that runs, say, every month, you might set the ground rules every 6 months or every year. But nonetheless, it's really important. I've been in meetings where phones have been going off throughout the whole meeting and nobody's even said anything. So things that might come up as ground rules, for example, might be that everybody switches off their phone, that everybody respects each other's opinions, and such like. Each meeting will have its own ground rules and each set of people will decide the different things that need to go onto those, but I suggest that that's a collaborative effort to come up with the ground rules. Point 3 is the key players, and we've touched on this a little bit at the beginning. As I've said, meetings are very expensive to run, so make sure that all the right people are there, but only the right people are there. In addition, you need some key players in a meeting, the chairman being the most important. It's the chairman who makes sure that everybody keeps to the agenda and runs to time. If an item is going to take longer than you think, then perhaps the chairman might allow a bit extra time or ask people to take it outside the meeting and do something at another time. A note taker is another key person in a meeting. That's the person who will make sure that the actions are all taken down. And sometimes a facilitator might be required for certain sections of the meeting. For example, if you're running a brainstorm or something like that, you might want someone to make sure that that runs smoothly. So, coming back to something we've mentioned already, point 4 is about parking it. By this, I mean that if somebody runs off on a wild tangent, write down what that was about and ask them to take that outside the meeting. It might be that it's something that needs only discussing by 2 or 3 people and there are 10 people in the meeting. Not everybody needs to be there to hear about it. I usually have a piece of paper on the wall that has a list of items that are parked. Sometimes we won't come across any of those things, but often that list will be full and there'll be lots of things for people to take away and discuss outside the meeting. This keeps the meeting tight and well timed. So point 5, and this is getting to the nub of matters, actions need to be written down. They need to identify what needs to be done, when it needs to be done by, and who needs to do it. This is the nub of getting meetings being effective and making sure that they incite action. And point 6 adds to this. Point 6 is about follow-up. So if we come onto my next section, which is about the cycle of meetings, a meeting will happen, and if it's a regular meeting, the minutes of the meeting will go out, and hopefully those go out up to a week later. Between 3 and 5 days would be ideal, in my opinion. But then this is a step that's often missed out. Just before the next meeting, I'd suggest 3 to 5 days before, send the action points out and the meeting minutes again. Send them to everybody who was at the meeting, and particularly to those who had actions that they had to do before the next meeting. Make sure that everybody knows that they're accountable for those actions and that you're expecting them to be done. This increases the rate of activity tenfold and makes sure that people are actually doing what they said they'd do in the previous meeting. It also, of course, avoids the frustration of everybody coming to the next meeting and knowing that everything that was on the agenda last time is going to have to go back on the agenda this time. So, in summary, great meetings include the right people and only the right people. Ask the people who you know need to be there. They take as little time as possible, so make sure you're covering all the points you intended to cover, and make sure you're getting action out of them. But don't go off on wild tangents, park those things and bring them up later. Great meetings achieve their objectives, so whatever was on the agenda, make sure that it's covered. And finally, and very importantly, great meetings incite action. Anybody who's running a good meeting cycle will make sure that the actions are properly actioned and that everybody knows that they're accountable for what happens. That's the end of this session on making meetings work. Hope to see you again in another session. Bye-bye.